Welcome, everyone. Let's see. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar with Nathan David. I'm going to give everyone a couple moments to hop in here and get acquainted with the platform. While we do that, I wanted to go over some housekeeping items for everyone today. I'm sure we're all familiar with webinar platforms by now, thanks to the pandemic, but I did want to let everyone know that there is a chat feature here in Demio that you can take full advantage of throughout this webinar. If you have any questions for Nathan during this presentation, just chat them in, and he will either do his best to answer that during the webinar, or we'll get to that at the end. Real quick, let's see. Oh, so in order to break the ice, let's chat in and have you all say hi, and let us know what class you are currently teaching and at what university. And I apologize in advance if you see me look over here. I have two screens and I'm kind of monitoring a lot, so that's why I'm looking all over the place. So yeah, just let us know, say hi, introduce yourself, and let us know what class you're teaching and at what university. We got Tracy from Rhodes State College in Lima, Ohio. Awesome. Thanks for coming, Tracy. Looks like we have about 42 people on here today, so pretty good turnout. There we go. The chats are starting to come in now. Internet marketing, social media, SEO, and digital strategy. Let's see. Entrepreneurship, awesome. Cool, guys. Keep chatting those in. We're curious to get to know you all and get to know what classes you teach and where you're from and everything. So utilize that chat feature. We're excited to have you here. While those are coming in, I did want to invite you all to the next StuCamp launch event, which will be coming up this month on October 29th. So there's a little call to action for you guys to register for that. We'll be launching several new simulations and courseware, including the following. Now, this is quite a big list, so pay attention. So we have professional selling courseware and mimic professional selling simulation, services and experience marketing courseware and mimic services marketing simulation, content marketing strategies courseware and mimic content marketing simulation, personal branding courseware and mimic personal branding simulation, business research essentials courseware, and finally, we have mimic email marketing simulation. So lots of cool new products coming to the StuCamp product lineup that we're excited about. And that'll happen again on October 29th. So be sure to register for that so you can see all of our new products and their features and see what's ahead on the road for the StuCamp team. Let's see. I do want to do some introductions real quick for everyone. And I see more and more people are still chatting in, which is awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. I'll start with myself for introductions. I am Chad Gray. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at StuCamp. I've been with StuCamp for almost 3 years now. It's been a long run, and I'm excited to be here with you today. On the back end of things, we have Amber Bolison, and I know I'm going to butcher that last name, so I'm sorry, but she is a new PMM to the team, and she's been with us for a couple months now, and she is awesome. She is on the back end of the webinar today. She'll be moderating the chat and making sure we get to as many questions as possible with the time that we have. And then last but not least, let's see. I want to make sure I covered everything before I introduce Nathan. Yes, so I will introduce Nathan here, and if I missed anything, somebody from my team let me know, and I'll come back to it. I have a lot of screens that I'm looking at and making sure I'm covering everything. So last but not least, we have our man of the hour, Nathan David. Nathan is very popular among the Stukin employees because he is such a hard worker and an awesome author for us. I've personally been working with Nathan for about 9 to 10 months and just had the pleasure last week of meeting him in person when he visited the Stukin headquarters. And we had an awesome meeting. I got to know him a lot better, and so did the rest of the team. So we are very excited to have him on this webinar today. And have him share with us his thoughts. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce him a little bit more and do his introduction, and then I will turn the time over to him. Again, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat, let us know. And so actually, let me backtrack. After I introduce Nathan, we'll have him present, and his presentation will run about 30, 40 minutes, I believe. And then we'll save time for about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A at the end for those questions that we didn't miss. So interact, don't be shy. We're all here to learn today, and we're excited. So Nathan David is the author of Stu Kent's digital, there he is, digital marketing analytics, strategic decision-making courseware. He has over 10 years of professional experience in digital marketing and business analytics. He has driven results for a range of businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to small businesses. He is passionate about teaching and currently serves as a visiting assistant professor of communication at John Carroll University. With that being said, I will now turn the time over to you, Nathan.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chad. Thanks for the kind words.
No problem.
And one of the things that was nice about my visit to Stu Kent was I had the opportunity to reflect on, as sometimes as teachers, right, we just do. And it provided me with some time to reflect on the different things I do and why I do them. And one of the things that I really realized was when I'm creating content like this webinar, it's all about, what do I find useful in my classes? What do I find useful in my day-to-day? And then how do I share that with the world? And so that's what I'm doing today. That's what I do when I work with Stu Kent. They're just my microphone, right? They're my microphone to the world, so I can share more and more with everybody. And they have the reach of getting out to all of you individuals. So that's just so phenomenal. And I really thank Stu Kent for being that microphone and allowing me and us to connect in these meaningful ways.
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate it. I'm going to hop off and let you do your thing, if that's all right. Okay.
Perfect. So without further ado, let's jump into the slides. So this is what we're here to talk about today: teaching digital marketing strategy and management like a boss, right? Like a boss, like really good, but also like a boss, like how, when I worked at companies, how I taught digital marketing strategy and management to new hires and new employees. So as teachers and instructors, we get to be that first boss to our students and give them a taste of what the world might look like when they get out into the professional world. And so my point of this presentation is, how do we be a good boss that helps them to grow and we nurture them, versus a boss that throws them out to sink or swim and sees what happens. And so how do we be that good boss? How do we impart beyond just tactical implementation? How do we impart strategy and management skills into our students and into the courses that we're teaching them? So quick background on me beyond what Chad already shared. I think of myself as a teacher, curriculum designer, speaker, and a consultant. And specifically, my focal area is on digital marketing strategy and analytics. And so my background started in digital marketing, and then I coupled that with business analytics and really was in the right place at the right time, getting lots of opportunities because I was marrying analytics with the marketing work that I was doing. And I was able to be a strategist. I was able to make decisions for organizations at a very young age because I was able to speak that language of analytics. So I teach currently at John Carroll. I do curriculum design work. So I created a textbook with Stu Kent called Digital Marketing Analytics Strategic Decision Making. But beyond that, I've actually done curriculum design for a variety of different organizations, including Wharton School and Kellogg School of Management. And so I've had my hand in a lot of different curriculums for digital marketing and analytics. And so I've been exposed to a lot of different things. I speak at webinars like this, but also at conferences. And then I still have one foot in the door as a consultant. And I run out of breath just saying all those things. And I know it's crazy, but I like to dabble in a little bit of everything because I feel like that makes me a really well-rounded teacher and instructor. When I'm in front of my students, I'm able to talk about all these different areas and the different learnings that I'm getting from all these different areas. And so today I want to share those learnings with you, and hopefully you find them as valuable resources for your classes. This is my logo slide, right? So if I was pitching a client, this is what I would show them. These are the different things that in different organizations that I've worked with. So you can see there's some large organizations like Sephora, Macy's, LensCrafter, where I worked with them at my time at Publicis Sapient as a consultant, but also a lot of organizations that are education entities, and doing a lot of different work on how do you take this work that I was doing for Macy's and teach it to a student so that they can go out into the world and be successful. Obviously not doing the exact same thing that I did for Macy's, but doing something similar and making similar decisions and using similar frameworks to make those decisions. So that's my logo slide. Moving on from there, this is the agenda for today. I'm going to talk about 2 tasks that you have within an organization, then why analytics is strategy, give you 4 strategic frameworks, and then finally deliver course resources to you. So you'll leave this webinar with resources that you can take, run with, and implement in your digital marketing strategy class, your digital marketing management class. So that is really my goal, is to help you get off the ground or enhance what you're already doing. You may use digital marketing strategies in a lot of different contexts and ways. When I talk about digital marketing strategy, I'm saying beyond digital marketing execution, right? So if I have a digital marketing 101 course, it's probably on digital marketing execution. And it's how do I do XYZ? How do I create a paid ad? How do I create a social media post? How do I create an email, right? That's on execution. That's what I would call digital marketing execution. Then building on that, you have digital marketing strategy, digital marketing management. So when I talk about digital marketing strategy, I'm saying take a step beyond that and do strategy across different tactics, coming up with plans and decision making. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about digital marketing strategy. So just know that as I use digital marketing strategy throughout this presentation, I'm talking about a step beyond digital marketing execution, and how we as educators can, teach them the execution part of it. I think that's important, but then build on that execution and teach them strategy, teach them management, so that when they get to the organization, they might be in an execution role, but they can have their eye on that management role, on that strategy role. So looking at the 2 tasks within an organization, you do and you think. Those are the 2 main tasks when you're asked.
Nathan, can I pause you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're getting some feedback from your mic hitting the zipper on your sweatshirt.
Okay.
Can we maybe try to move that a little bit? It's just like rubbing on it. So
let me, okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'm going to turn off my camera just in case there's a wardrobe malfunction.
Okay.
But I'm going to take off my sweatshirt. I'll be right back.
Perfect. I'll distract everyone. Sorry, guys. Thank you for bearing with us. We just want to make this as enjoyable as possible for everyone. So just wanted to make that little side note there. Marina, what university is he with? He is with John Carroll University.
I'm back.
He's back. That's better. Thank you.
Okay, so
I'll hop
sorry
off
about
now.
that. Were
It's
you
all right.
still able to understand what I was saying though? Like, should I repeat myself?
No, yeah, it was good. We could hear you. It was just every now and then when you move, it just rubbed a little bit. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, this is me super casual now. It's just my undershirt. So good thing I had an undershirt on.
you look great.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'll
Nothing
hop
like the
off.
Super Bowl, right? Like, okay, I don't have to take off anything else, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. You guys are so demanding at Stuken. Gosh. So, okay, so you do and think, right? So when you're in an organization, people will ask you like to do this specific thing. And then other times you need to think about how to do something. So the quintessential example is the tree within the forest. The doers are really focused on that tree, on the specific, the details, being accurate, focusing locally versus the thinkers that are taking a step back and they're thinking in general, they're thinking in abstract and they're thinking globally. And so, can you see the forest through the trees? That's what we hopefully are preparing our students to do. We'll teach them, how to identify that tree, right? How to create an email. But then we also help them take a step back and say, why are you creating this email? Like, in what context? What other things are happening? And how do they interface with one another? So, that's very important because if you're a doer, yes, doers are important. We need people to be doers at organizations, but you're not going to have a lot of autonomy in your job. You're not going to have probably as much satisfaction in what you're doing because you don't have that autonomy to take a step back and say, you know what, we could do this better. We could do it differently. Let's think about this in a different way. So the analogy I use from doer and thinker to the organization is execute and strategize, right? So those are synonyms. Execute is do, strategize is think. And so here are some jobs that I feel fall under each category. Under the execute category, you could be a paid media buyer. So you're buying things from Google Ads or you're buying things from a display network, whatever it might be. You could be an executor. You could be a content writer. You're just cranking out content, writing blog posts, writing articles for the website. And you could be an email associate, just creating emails and sending those out. You could be a social media scheduler. So you're just posting content at specific times and times of day. So you're executing, right? So that's the executor, they're doing things. But then you have the strategists who have more autonomy and more authority and more influence within the organization. These are individuals like digital marketing managers. So they manage across multiple paid channels or across paid, own, and earn channels, and they're deciding what's going to happen and where you invest time and energy. You have content strategists that think up what is that piece of content that we don't have yet that we're going to create? What piece of content on our website needs to be revisited or revised? Email strategists that are coming up with the strategy behind the emails, the type of individual that we're targeting with our emails. In social media managers, where you're deciding things like, will we be on Twitter? Is Twitter a valid social media channel for us to pursue? Or should we maybe not pursue Twitter and do something else? So that's more high level. So why is it important for us to help our students get over to the strategize side? It's super important because these jobs on the execute side are going away. I'm not saying they're gone. I'm not saying that you won't be able to find job listings for these specific jobs, but they're going away. Why are they going away? Because of machine learning, because of automation. These things are these execution items are less needed by organizations. For example, paid media used to be very labor intensive. You would have people who were specialized in Google Ads, and they would daily be going in and adjusting and modifying and changing ads and changing keywords and changing this or that. Now, for example, Google Ads has a promotion for or a program to promote apps. So you can do app campaigns and promote an application for mobile devices. And the only inputs are you give your objective. So you want app installs or you want app conversions, people to do something specifically within your app. And then you give them like 3 creative inputs. And then you just say, give me those app installs, and Google goes out into the world and it finds you app installs. Machine learning is used and it finds you installs. And so there's not a paid media manager who's doing that. There's just or a paid media buyer who's doing that, because it's a one-time thing. So the digital marketing manager just sets it up once, and then Google runs with it, and the machine learning really executes for you. Content writing is a little bit more further off, but places like the Washington Post, if you do research on how they're creating content, a lot of their content is created first by machines and then massaged by humans. And so let's say the score of the baseball game yesterday, they have algorithm just create that post, and then they might have a human review it before they publish it onto the website. And so that content creation execution piece is going away, but that strategy piece is not going away, right? Someone still needs to determine, what do we need blog posts about baseball games? Do we need content about this specific topic or area? And so that's why it's so important for me to impart some of these strategy skills to students, because we want them to be able to secure these jobs and not be stuck in these execution jobs. So what are the different elements that are under execute and strategize? So I like to think of it as, yeah, you have execute versus strategize, but you also should think of it as an and, because no one person will only think or only do. There is going to be a combination of both. And so, yeah, it's valuable for you to understand how to do something, because then you can more easily strategize on that specific thing. So, what are those specific execution things that those individuals are doing? They're setting up campaigns, they're writing, they're doing content just distribution, pushing it out to people in different places, and they're doing content creation. But then strategy that's happening for this, the skills and items that they're using are analytics. They're doing decision making, they're prioritizing things, and they're allocating budgets and resources. And so those are the strategy elements. Obviously, it helps you if you understand those execution elements, how to do strategy. And so we need to teach our students both the execution, but ultimately the strategy. And then looking back at the gloom and doom, if they don't have that strategy element, their job might be gone in the future. So we really want to equip them with strategy. So what does that look like in a course at a university? Having some sort of digital marketing 101 where you're getting them into the different platforms and you have them do things like this: campaign setup, writing, content distribution, content creation. That's the doing of it. But then also having a course that builds on that, that says, okay, now let's take a step back. A lot about this tree and that tree, but let's take a step back and look at the forest and understand how everything works together. So now I wanted to do a thought exercise. And this is something that we actually had at Cleveland Clinic, what I call a career ladder, and they called a career ladder. And so a career ladder is how you, when you come into the organization, how you move up, right? All the way from entry level to CMO. How do you move from that entry level marketer all the way up to the top? So if we visualize this, some organizations like Cleveland Clinic had a really clear path for someone to go from entry level up, 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 and up. Other organizations, there's nothing that's clearly drawn out, right? There's no ladder. There's just like, you're here, and then if you do a good job, maybe you'll get more things. And so managers, so if we're going to teach marketing strategy like a boss, there's two different types of managers, right? There's the manager that nurtures that individual up that career ladder. And then there's the manager who just lets them sink or swim. The manager who just throws them out there and sees it if it sticks, sees if it works. And if it doesn't work, if they're not doing a good job, they're fired or they don't get promoted. And so we want to be that manager that's nurturing them, that's giving them the rungs of the ladder so they can move up. in that career ladder move up and progress in their organization. And so this is so important when we think about our students, because we're their first manager, we're their first boss, and we can be that good boss so that if they land a job and they have what I would say a not ideal boss that just is sink or swim and doesn't provide them with context and structure to help them succeed, that they can fall back on what they learned from us, and then they can thrive still in their career even if they weren't equipped with that knowledge. So there's a lot of things that we can provide our students to help them understand digital marketing strategy and to get them thinking beyond just the execution to thinking about strategy and management. So taking that step back and looking more broadly at strategy as a whole. So one thing that I'll take a moment just to share with you now is if to in the scenario of thinking about that boss who just sinks or swims, just drops the students in or drops that employee into a specific platform and sees how they do. We have resources. There's a blog post that I created. It's called 67 Resources for Teaching Digital Marketing. And so these are resources to help students build their resumes. A lot of them are about getting into specific platforms and doing specific activities. So this resource list is really well built out, and it has context around everything. And it's saying, like, first you do this as a student, then you do this as a student, and you build up to whatever it is that you're ultimately learning. Imagine if these resources were literally just like, go to Google Analytics and figure it out. That's what those sink or swim managers are doing. They say, Google Analytics, that's your job. And then they're just figuring it out. And so it's not providing that scaffolding. It's not providing that structure to the students. And so let's give them some structure, give them some of these resources, like these 67 free resources that provide not only context, but exposure to actually doing some of the work and working with some of the different tools. So that's them working within the specific tools. Now, taking the step back of looking at the forest as a whole, we can get into the strategy. And from my perspective and from my experience, analytics is strategy. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it is so interwoven with strategy that if you're not doing analytics work, then you're not able to execute on strategy work effectively. So strategy may have been in 20 years ago more of a art of this is what I feel we should do, but now we have so much data that it really is a science, and it needs to be focused on the analytics, the data, and then making decisions from that data and from those insights. So thinking about the evolution of marketing, right? 20 years ago, when we just had direct mail, print, radio, TV. So we only had these channels, and strategy had to be a softer art. You had to think about the individuals and do customer research and try to understand these individuals, and then throw out a Hail Mary and say, I hope that this hits the way I think it will hit. Obviously, there's some research behind it, but you can't get that instantaneous feedback. Once we moved to desktops and then ultimately mobile, where we had so much data on the interactions that were happening within individuals, and even beyond digital devices, now we have so much more data on things like television. Think about how much data we have about the commercials that people are watching now in between the different shows because of streaming. We have all this data, and we can ingest all the data and then find the insights and then make decisions off of it. And so what is that? That's analytics. You're taking in all the data and then you're making a decision. Unlike maybe historically, we were based on past performance. So this really worked well. So that's going to be our strategy. We're going to pair television with radio in this specific way because it worked well. Nowadays, that doesn't work because you have the data. And so you can see, if I put this out into the world, Does it land? Does it not land? You can see really quickly if you're getting a return on that investment or not. So, for example, of the magnitude of data that is being ingested by digital platforms, this is on the growth of consumer data. And on the left-hand side, you have the specific platform, so email, text, YouTube, Google, internet browsers, whatever it might be. And then on the right-hand side, you have the data collected each minute. So, for example, every minute, Gmail and other email platforms are ingesting data from over 188 million emails every minute. And so there's so much data that's coming through. For us as marketers, thinking about Twitter, there's over 500,000 tweets sent every minute. So that's 500,000 opportunities and 500,000 data points that we can mine for insight and strategy. So it just doesn't make sense anymore for us to infer, for us to guess. We need to be pulling in this data through analytics and then making strategic decisions off of that data that we're receiving. And companies are doing that. They're pulling in as much data as they can. This is a graph that I really love, or a chart I really love, on the growth of marketing technology. So here we can see year after year the growth of marketing technology tools. And so in the first column is the year, and then the second column is the amount of marketing tool companies. So these are companies that are offering to marketers out in the business world tools to collect data and to better understand consumers and what's happening online. We go from 150 companies in 2011 to 2019 when this data was last collected, and then was stopped because the number of companies was so large that we have 7,040 companies that are all delivering marketing technology tools for us to ingest data from consumers and their activities and actions that they're doing online. So you can see that there was an exponential increase, and now there's a lot of companies that are out there that are all collecting data for marketers. And so again, this is just the flip side of the coin, right? We see the consumers are producing a bunch of data, and now we can see companies are hoovering up, like vacuuming up as much data as humanly possible on their end. And so analytics is the universal language of digital marketing across all channels. So the graph included Twitter, it included email, it included text. So analytics, I can talk about all those different channels and all those different ways to interact with consumers using one language, and that language is analytics. And so whether I'm talking to a social media manager, a search engine marketing individual, a display advertiser, someone in charge of emails, I can use the same language and say, what was your reach? How many impressions did you get? How many conversions did you get? What was the ROI on your specific tactic? I can use the same language across each one of those channels, and it means the same thing. And then we can compare all those different channels and the insights from them universally using that same language. So analytics is that universal language. So therefore, it is the language of digital marketing strategy. I love this quote. So this is from the Hedrick Executive Consultants. And so they help to find individuals for executive roles, for C-level roles. And from their research, 80% of new CMOs have analytics experience. And so that means before they became a CMO, they were in a role that was specifically focused on analytics. And so these CMOs are the leaders of the organization. So if we're going to prepare our students for these top leadership roles, we need to equip them with analytics skills so that they can be that strategic voice who's leading the marketing organization at their company. What I want to get into is into the strategic frameworks that I have for how you impart this to your students. And so, like I mentioned before, this is the empathic boss. This is the nurturing boss who's helping their employee understand what they need to do to succeed. This isn't always provided to new employees. A lot of students have, or new employees have, sink or swim bosses where all that they get is a very vague directive. whether it's because of time or because that boss doesn't really know much about marketing and digital marketing. But this is us being that empathetic boss so that they can navigate their way through the organization once they get there. So the first thing that I use is called the measurement model. And so this measurement model is a simple breakdown that I provide to students, which they can take and use within their careers. And it's to understand, is my strategy aligned with the organizational objectives? So it starts with business objectives and then those goals that support those objectives, and finally key performance indicators that support those goals. So business objectives might be to increase sales, and then goals under that, they're SMART goals, right? So increase e-commerce sales on website by 5% by the end of October. Whatever it might be, it's a very specific goal, right? That ladders up into that objective. And then under that, we have specific KPIs. So maybe a KPI would be total revenue. Maybe a KPI would be total profits. Maybe it would be ROI if you're looking at a specific channel and what's the return on investment from that channel. But this is really important because this should be the first question that a new employee asks. When someone tells them to do something, they should ask, okay, what's the measurement model? What is the structure that I'm doing this within? So what is the end business objective? And then what are the goals that I'm trying to support? And the question that I hear asked often is, at the end of the year, during my performance review, how will I be evaluated if I did a good job or not? And the answer should be something like this, right? You're driving this KPI, which leads to this goal, which leads to this business objective. So this is the first thing for students to understand, so that when they go out into a company, they can always try to frame what they're doing. And by framing it, they'll be more impactful, right, with their work, but also then they position themselves to be that strategist. Because if someone's like, wow, that was a good question. We just wanted to create Twitter. We just wanted a Twitter account. We didn't really know why. Then they start thinking of you as that strategist who's thinking beyond just the tactic and more about the strategy behind. So hopefully that resonates with a lot of you, but I think that's super important and a good place to start. Then teaching them what I call the decision-making framework is really important. And this is based off of the scientific method. So we're in the scientific method, right? You form a hypothesis, so a question, and the answer that you think is for that question. And then you collect data, you analyze that data, and then you ultimately determine, was my hypothesis wrong or right? And then you go back to the drawing board and you repeat again and again and again. Here, we're just using more business language. And so we're saying we start with a question. So we identify a business question. Then we curate, so we collect and organize data around that specific question. We analyze that data that we curated. So we conduct an analysis and we determine insights. And then finally, we optimize. So we didn't just do that analysis for no reason. We're going to take some sort of action. And then we do it all over again. And good employees who are strategic are using this framework. So when I'm working with a new employee, I'm saying to them, you need to be constantly optimizing. And what do I mean by constantly optimizing? You need to go through this process over and over again. So this should be your day-to-day, like, what question do I have that I can collect data about and then come to an answer? So they can be really big questions, like what should be the allocation of our budget between all of our different marketing channels, or it could be a really small question, like how do I, what is the most impactful ad for paid search? And so if a new employee is thinking this way and they're constantly trying to evolve, it's slight incremental increases where they're going through this process over and over and over again. They're going to have that incremental growth up, up, and up. And that's where we want them to be. And then if anyone comes to you, because the problem is we can't teach them. It's impossible to say this is the best practice for every situation that you're going to be in. And even if I had that information where I said, this is the best practice for search engine optimization, this is the best practice for email, this is the best practice for TikTok, that information would go out of date in like a month. And so, whereas today, maybe this sort of ad is best on paid search, we don't want to equip the student with what is ideal today. Instead, we want to say, yeah, start here. That's like what most people are doing that's successful, but don't accept that as a fact. Question it and evolve what you're doing over and over again, because you're then going to be the person at the organization who discovers what we've been doing for the last 10 years no longer works. And that's you being a strategist. That's you uncovering this opportunity that was unknown to other individuals. And so this process is super important, and it's about teaching the student right to fish rather than just giving them the fish, saying like, the perfect email has this, 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 and that. Well, that's nice today, but tomorrow it's not going to be true anymore. And so they need to be able to work through this process to figure out what the perfect email is for their organization at a specific point in the future. So building on that previous model of asking business questions and then growing on it, the Gartner Analytics ascendancy model is very helpful for questions. And what sort of questions should we be asking? And so going back to the previous model, you always start with a business question, right? But those business questions can vary in nature, and some are more impactful than others. And so when we look at the impact that that question has, the value that that question has for the organization, there's 4 different categories that Gartner uses. There's descriptive, which is saying what happened. So in the paid search example, I could say, how many conversions did we get last month? That's descriptive. We're just figuring out what happened. That's valuable, right? But then I could say diagnostic, why did that happen? Why did we get 10 conversions? Well, this is a little more valuable if we go through the analysis and we determine why. It might be because we had a better offer, or because we changed the ad copy or the keywords or the time of day, whatever it might be. We're learning the why, and that's more helpful because in the future we can try to emulate some of those things that were successful. Then we get into predictive, which is asking questions about what will happen. And this is a lot of what happens at the end of the year. Someone will go to an email marketing manager and say, how many sales will we get from email next year? Well, you don't want to just throw out a number, and you don't want to just use the same number from this year. So you should be using that data to predict what's going to happen in the future. And the value of that is really high, because if you're able to go to your CMO, if you're able to go to your executives and say, the email marketing channel will drive this much revenue in this year, then you can be part of the plan. You can be ingrained into everything that's happening at that organization. And then finally, prescriptive, which I feel is the gold standard, where we want to be, where we want to get students to. This is really being a strategist, and it's prescribing what to do. So how can we make it happen, right? And so I had people come to me, and I still have people come to me and say, how do we get this? We want 100% more sales on our website. We want 1 million visitors to our website per month. How do we get there? Well, using analytics, you can look at your historical data and you can prescribe, saying, well, if you want to get to 1 million visitors per month, you need this much more investment. We need this much more content. We need X, Y, Z. And that's where all that real heavy strategy work is happening. You're prescribing, right, what should happen, and it's all based off of analytics. So here I am as a content marketing manager, and I, instead of just, producing, I might have created an entire roadmap of, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to produce, and these are the resources I need to get us to that 1 million user mark. So it's creating that vision of like where you're going, and then prescribing what's needed to actually ultimately get to that vision. The final model is, I just have to include this in almost every presentation I do, is owned, paid, and earned media model. This is just very helpful because it is timeless, and you can use it today. You could have used it 10 years ago. You could use it 100 years from now, but it's talking about the different sort of channels that we have available to us and helping students understand that, yeah, if I'm an email marketer, yeah, it's important that I really understand email, but I should understand that email is under the owned media umbrella. And then there's other things in the world, right? There's paid marketing happening, there's earned marketing happening, there's other owned media happening as well. And so, how are all these things working together? And this framework I find is the most effective and flexible, because when TikTok came along, we knew that, okay, we own our TikTok account, so it'd be under owned, but also there's some earned aspects of TikTok where individuals will share content about our brand. So that's an owned and earned play, or some other new thing comes around, right? Then you can ultimately determine where it falls, and then you have this framework to understand how you can incorporate it into your strategy. And ideally, the most effective businesses have a little of everything. They have owned media, they have paid media, and then they have earned media happening as well. So now let's take all of this, right? So what we were talking about, being that boss, that good boss, that's nurturing and empathetic, how do we impart that in our courses? So I wrote digital marketing analytics, strategic decision making, and this is the resource that I use in my classes. I teach a digital marketing strategies class that is it's not a digital marketing analytics class, it's a digital marketing strategies class. And I use this textbook for it because I feel that this is the best thing that I can be giving my students in order for them to be strategic, is teaching them analytics, the language of strategy, so that they can implement and do what they need to do as a future strategist, as a future manager. And so the book works really well. If you have a course that's specific to digital marketing analytics, a lot of universities do not. And so it also is a great next step after a student takes something like digital marketing essentials, course with digital marketing essentials. That's like the 101. That's you getting in and exposed to all the different channels. Then you build on that and you say, how do you become a strategist? Well, you need to learn analytics and strategic decision making, and how analytics can empower you to do that. So the textbook has those four frameworks plus another one built into it. So the first half of the textbook is really focused on these frameworks and strategic decision making. And then the second half of the textbook is all about you dropping them into these controlled experiences, where we drop them into Google Analytics, but we've equipped them with the skills of how to think about things, and we've also equipped them with context so they understand, what they should be doing within each platform, to give them some of that hands-on experience as well. Because the best manager, the best strategist is going to be someone who's been there and now they're doing strategy around it as well. There's 15 chapters, there's a syllabus and a course outline, which I know we'll be sharing with you as well. So the syllabus is now shared under the handout section, and then we'll put the course outline there as well. But the best thing to do is just to request instructor access. You can access everything for free on your end and kind of see how it might fit within your specific course, your specific program. There's a bunch of assignments which are good for the students to get that hands-on experience, and then video tutorials about, again, providing them that context. So we're not just dropping them in the deep end, we're showing them how to use tools before we put them in there. And then lecture slides and lesson plans as well, and quizzes. So when I was talking about the two phases of the book, the two parts, so there's the beginning and then there's the end, and the beginning is really focused on strategy and strategic decision making. And so it's all about understanding the consumer, understanding your company, understanding that measurement model, understanding that cycle, right, of questioning, curating, analyzing, and optimizing, and then diving into each one of those areas. So teaching them how to analyze, teaching them how to optimize. So that's all that really heavy and important information for them to be a strategist. Then it's goes into dropping them into specific experiences and providing context and saying, okay, well, now you need to analyze a website, or now you need to analyze organic search. Look at this tool and look at the data. What decisions will you make? What did you learn from looking at this data? So on and so forth. And so it goes through various owned media as well as paid media and earned media. The great thing about this framework of paid owned earned is that paid media, yeah, there's a lot of different nooks and crannies of paid media, right? You can do display, you can do e-commerce, you can do search advertising, you can do affiliate marketing. But the one thing that they have in common is the measurement model behind almost all paid media is exactly the same. And so teaching them that measurement model and analytics allows them to take that knowledge and impart it to anything they do in the future that involves paid media, whether that paid media exists today or it's incepted, 10 years from now. Same thing with earned media. There's a very similar framework that is that you look at for metrics that are important, KPIs that are important for all earned media. It's about impressions. It's about the sentiment across the board. And so you can teach them that skill. And then in the future, if they're earning media in different ways, they can apply that knowledge. And so really the most important thing for us is to help our students be that nurturing boss to them, right? So don't assume that they're going to have that kind boss that nurtures them in their first job. They're probably going to have a really busy person who maybe they're nice, but they don't know how to direct this new employee. And so they just plop them in the middle and then it's sink or swim, and we'll see what happens. And so what we can be to our students is that nurturing first boss. So let's teach digital marketing strategy and management like a boss. Give them these frameworks, give them these resources so that they're able to be very successful in their future careers. The URL for the textbook is right here. It's stukent.com/DMA. So if you would like to research that further, and then I'm always open to connect with anyone. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, ask me questions about how I teach things, ask me questions about resources I use. I'm more than happy to have those conversations. So on LinkedIn, I'm at linkedin.com/in/Nathan P. David. And then thank you again, Stu Kent, for having me. Thanks for giving us this platform to share and collaborate. And I'm very happy to spend some time answering questions now.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot, and I specifically really liked the decision-making framework. And I think if students can really understand that, they can be great marketers, because that's all we do all day long is, hypothesize, test, and then just do it all over again, right? So that was really cool. I like that. I learned a lot. Awesome. So we actually didn't have that many questions in the chat come in. I'm not sure if it was because your presentation was just that good that everyone was just so intrigued by it, or if they understood well or what. But now would be the time, everyone, if you're still on, to ask Nathan any questions that you have, and we'll just funnel those to him for about the next 5 or 6 minutes or so. We'll try to wrap up around it'd be noon for us. I'm not sure what time zone everyone else is in, but in about 5-6 minutes.
One thing, so I just saw Marina asking about what projects I use in class. And so I had a couple of thoughts on that. So you can drop students into the experience through assignments, but probably the most impactful way to really get them into hands-on doing something is through a project or through a simulation. And so there's a simulation that pairs with my textbook called Digital Marketing Analytics. It's Mimic Digital Marketing Analytics. And that has them take the driver's seat of doing A/B testing as well as budget allocation for a variety of different scenarios. And so that's a great way to say, hey, get your hands dirty and try to figure it out in this specific area after we provided the structure from the textbook. And then the other thing that I do is pull in a customer. So whether it's a client that I work with through my business, or a local business. And sometimes I'll have them work with that organization and help them solve a specific need or problem they have. And that is usually very productive because they get to experience the process of helping the customer step back and look at the big picture. Because often, especially small businesses, are very adamant that, I need email, or I need a video, or I need this specific thing, versus thinking about the plan as a whole. So that's what I would recommend. And any thoughts that you have there too, I'd love to hear. But that's my thought is, you can use assignments, but then to build on that, you can use simulations and you can use projects as well.
Yeah, awesome. Our simulation that Nathan just mentioned, he helped work on and ideate and come up with. So it's an awesome simulation, and it goes beyond the tools that are already available in out there in the world. So it allows your students to get practice doing things that they can't normally get practice with. So I wanted
Marina,
to,
sorry,
yeah.
I'm just like really loving this conversation. So Marina asked about how do I design the project with the client, and so the most important thing is making sure that the client is invested in it, right? And so I have them complete applications. So I have clients apply for the program. I invite people to apply, but I have them apply so that there's some stake in for them. They had to take time to go through it, and then ultimately through that application process commit to spending X amount of time with the student at the beginning and end of the project. So that's what I try to do to provide some framework. Obviously, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In the ideal world, they'd be paying you for the service and the students for the service, but I'm not to that point yet. I don't have like a little marketing agency within the organization, within my university, or anything like that.
Cool. I see that Vanda just asked, how do you build in the project methodology? I'm not 100% sure what she means by that. Do you happen to know, Nathan? If not, Vanda, can we get a little more clarification as to what you mean?
Yes. So,
if you got it.
So since it's focused, right, this isn't a project management course, and so I don't get too in the weeds about this is how you structure a project and timelines, and then these are different approaches to projects. Like you can have a traditional project timeline or an agile product timeline, but basically the resources and the frameworks that are provided are based off of agile, which almost all digital marketing that's happening is agile, in the sense that we have the ability to pivot really quickly and change our focus. And so the decision-making framework is all about how do we be agile and change our priorities, change our initiatives rapidly versus a more structured long-term project. So it doesn't talk about like, let's plan out a whole website redesign. Instead, it's more focused on, okay, how do we iterate and take what we currently have and make it slightly better.
Awesome. Kristen, it looks like, has a pretty significant question. If you just want to go ahead and read that, Nathan.
Okay.
I think that will be a good one. But it's a long one, so I'll just let you read it real quick.
Oh, Kristen, I love that question. So you're growing on my analogy. So I say analytics is the universal language across all channels. And then you said, is it really more of a dialect? So each channel has its own dialect of analytics. So the place that ultimately, when I work with a client, you want to get to a place where you can compare channel to channel, right? That's ideally where you would be, so that you could say, this is what email's doing versus this is what social is doing. This is what paid media is doing versus this is what earned media is doing. And so ideally you would get to a point where it's the same language, right? So an impression here is an impression there. Obviously within the different tools like Google Ads, an impression within Google Ad is determined in a different way than an impression through Facebook. So how do you unify that language? So the best way to do it is, instead of using the metrics from the platforms as like the source of truth, instead using the metrics from a common denominator as a source of truth. So my email, my social media, my paid media, my display all drive to my website. And so then when I'm talking universally about everything, I don't talk about what Facebook's telling me and what Google Ads is telling me. I just look at my website and what my website data is saying. And so that way, when I'm making universal decisions across the board, I have that common language which says this is how it's performing on the website. But then if I'm just focused on how do I enhance social presence, you might have times where you zoom in and you're like, well, I'm just going to look at the analytics from Facebook and make some optimizations based off of this data that we only have through Facebook. But obviously that doesn't impact or apply to anything else outside of Facebook.
Awesome. As you can tell, guys, I think we all see that Nathan is very passionate about this topic and loves speaking on it. So I am going to wrap up the questions right now because we're out of time. But to answer some questions, I know this might not have gotten clarified, but there will be a recording sent to all attendees, as well as all the handouts we gave out and links and everything. Those will all be sent to you as soon as possible after we end this. Give us some time. We have to organize everything and get it all pretty looking for everyone. So, and then also, if you are interested, go check out the website. The link for Nathan's courseware, Digital Marketing Analytics, Strategic Decision Making. I see that a couple of you said I'm interested in checking it out. So get with your course consultant to figure out how it would best fit your class and get more details about it. So Nathan, is there anything else you'd like to say or finish off with?
No, just thanks for putting this together, Chad, for giving us this opportunity to chat with one another. And then everybody, let's keep the conversation going, especially if you have ideas on how to enhance or incorporate in new frameworks. I'm always open to hear that as well. But my ultimate goal is to create something that helps students succeed in their future jobs. And hopefully you see the value in what we have here.
Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for attending. And remember, launch at the end of the month, October 29th. We're excited. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.